My name is Bobby Revalee. I'm employed with the Fayette County Sheriff's Department. I'm currently a day shift sergeant. I also instruct close quarter combat and ground fighting. In the past, I've been a chief deputy, jail commander, and canine handler. How did I get started in law enforcement? When I was a child, we had a campsite, and my father had woke me up around noon. I think I was in 7th grade, and everybody knows when you're in 7th grade, you sleep till 2 or 3 in the afternoon because we're so busy. But he woke me up so we could go mow grass at our campsite. We did that, and when we returned, front door of the house was open. And when we entered, everything was gone. Television, back then it was VCRs, guns, jewelry, and the house was totally destroyed. A phone call was made. Our sheriff's department showed up, and the kind of the irony here, the cool part was that the deputy that investigated that burglary was the very first partner that I ever had. So it was kind of cool. But they investigated the burglary a couple weeks later, made 2 arrests in Ohio, recovered about 90% of our property, and the 2 bad guys that broke in were escaped out of a Florida prison. And I just thought, as a small little lad back then, I just thought, this is like the coolest job in the world, to be able to go out and right the wrong and make a positive difference. And that moment stuck with me until several years later, and here I am. Most tragic event during my career in law enforcement. That's a tough question to answer, just because we see a lot of negative things. What comes to mind, 18, 20 years ago, we had a house fire in Connorsville, and police were first on the scene. The house was engulfed. I mean, we ran to the back door and it was flames coming out. Went to the front door and there's flames coming out. One of the city police officers was injured by busting out a window trying to get in, and we just couldn't get in. Fire department arrived and everybody did what they could, dragging hoses and setting stuff up, and firemen made entry, and a few minutes later they pulled out the body of a little girl, and she was lifeless. It was tough to deal with. And about a week later, I received a letter at my house. Have no idea how they got my address, have no idea how they even knew that I was there, but it was from the parents of the little girl. And in the letter they thanked us for our efforts, and that was a tough one. Why do I think so many law enforcement officers gravitate towards outdoor activities? I think there's several reasons. One being solitude. We deal with the public day in, day out. As soon as we go on duty, we're dealing with the public until we end our shift. For me, it's kind of nice to hop into my bass boat and to get in the back of that cove, or climb up in a tree stand or ground blind, and just have that solitude and be one with nature and get some true relaxation in. And at the same time, when you set the hook on a 5-pounder, when that big buck crosses your path, here comes that adrenaline dump. So it's tied in more ways than one. The outdoors and law enforcement they're hand in hand. Biggest fish I've ever caught in a tournament was last year at Lake Patoka in southern Indiana. I was fishing with a guy from Ohio, and we become great friends. I had flipped out into this little rock pile, reared back, set the hook. It was one of those deals I thought I was hung up, and then I kind of felt something move, and I'm like, oh, that's a fish, So we netted it, and it's here in the floor of the boat flopping around, and I'm like, dude, that's huge. It's going to go a long way today, I walked across the stage of the BFL, and it weighed in at 5 pounds 4 ounces, and I was like, dude, that's sweet. That's a nice fish. Tournament director looks at me and says, man, that's a great fish for Lake Patoka. However, big fish is 5 pounds 5 ounces. You're an ounce short. And I was just like, wow, should have left that worm in it, I guess. 1 ounce shy. Oh well, great fish. What got me into fishing was, it was my father. I grew up 10 minutes from Brookville Lake. So my dad took me fishing, quite a bit. We were walleye fishing back then, trolling for walleye. Tournament fishing came a little bit later on in life, a lot later on in life. And I'd say friends got me involved with the tournament fishing, but fishing in general, that was from dear old Dad. The most exciting fishing tournament that I've been a part of. I've had the opportunity. I've really, in a short amount of time of tournament fishing, I've really been blessed. I've fished with former Bassmaster Classic champions. I've got a lot of friends that are in the sport that are very good. I fished Indiana Bass Federation, FLW events. But when I was about 10 or 11 years old, my family took a trip to Florida with another family. And during that time, the women had left to go do some shopping stuff, and the men had chartered a boat. So while we were on the boat, they handed us rods and reels. And again, I don't know, like 10, 11 years old. And everybody threw in a buck to fish a tournament. Largest fish wins. And we'd fish for 2-3 hours. And at that young age, I had won my first fishing tournament. But it was so much more than that, because at the time, my dad come in second. And I beat the greatest angler that I've ever seen, greatest outdoorsman I've ever seen. So that was my Bassmaster Classic right there. I was beating my old man when I was 10, 11 years old.
Did you ever do that again?
Never. Never.
That was it?
But that was the one and only. But you know what? That's how I remember it. So that's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
And I would trade. I'd trade any of the others to do it again.
This is a freaking giant, biggest fish I've ever caught.
Yes, sir! Sorry, get too loud.
Oh, you're fine.